I have been using the M2 MacBook Air for the past month, and after this extended use, I have learned a lot about this laptop, its strengths, its weaknesses, and who exactly should buy this MacBook, and who should avoid it. So let's get... Actually, hold on. Something feels wrong. I can't do this video. I can't concentrate with this itchy, scratchy stubble.
Harry's.
Yes, Harry's is seriously one of the best tools in your arsenal for a clean and comfortable shave. This $3 starter kit includes everything you need to get started, including a blade, which is manufactured in their own factory in Germany, a blade cover, a foaming shave gel with aloe and hyaluronic acid, which feels so relieving on my super sensitive skin, and these really premium weighted handles with a two-tone design with deeper grooves for improved grip, with 50% of the plastic in the razor being made from recycled material. And this ember color? Yeah, it just really pops. And Harry's razors are also fairly priced, with no outrageous price tags for razor replacements, and best of all, they are high quality, so they glide and hug all over your face smoothly with their flex hinge and topped off with a precision trimmer. So to get a shave as smooth as mine, start by redeeming your starter set for just $3 when you go to harrys.com/gregsgadgets or click the link in the description below. And thank you to Harry's not only for sponsoring this video, but also for making me look good. Oh yeah, much better. Now, up until this point, I have been trying to really nail down what makes a good laptop and what we should expect update-wise as Apple continues to refine and update their MacBooks, now with their own Apple Silicon. This expectation literally racked my brain for a year as I tried to figure out what Apple would possibly do to one-up their M1 MacBooks, which absolutely blew my mind when they first came out. Now, nearly 2 years after that mind-blowing experience, to say that I have gotten used to Apple Silicon would be an understatement, and sometimes it's hard for me to remember what it was like to use a MacBook before the switch from Intel. Going back and watching my reviews, they were mostly and generally favorable to Apple's MacBooks, but complaints remained around a myriad of issues: performance, thermals, battery life, and a general lack of feeling like there was a solid low-end MacBook recommendation that was packed full of modern specs and features. Now, we got a majority of those updates when Apple introduced the M1 chip, but not all of them. Apple's laptops were mostly perfected on the inside, but the outside remained dull and unexciting. The M2 MacBook Air changed that. Apple, to their credit, shipped a design that is worthy of the advanced internals that made the previous version of this laptop, I think, one of the best laptops ever made. I look at the thin design and think, is this a laptop that Apple could have shipped with the Intel chips and still deliver the everyday computer that was meant to handle the basic to the intermediate Mac tasks? And the answer is no. They could not have done this type of laptop with Intel inside of it. Every time I pick up this M2 Air, I appreciate its lighter body over my still great and in many ways more advanced 14-inch MacBook Pro. And it just feels generally less bulky than that laptop. And while you can look at the spec sheet and say that in reality the form factor and even the weight isn't a drastic difference between these two products, the Air just lends itself more as a laptop that feels less like a burden in your bag and you really want to take it with you. The Air's design accentuates that portable nature, and in a friendly way that says, pick me up and take me with you, Greg. Take me with you, Greg. Please take me with you. I'll be a good little MacBook. One concern I've seen a lot in the comments section in my initial M2 MacBook Air videos was, did the midnight color paint chip off anywhere? And after a month of use and closely inspecting this laptop, the answer is no. However, the midnight color continues to be a fingerprint magnet. But after 1 month, I'm still glad I chose this color. It's a bolder look for the MacBook, perhaps even more suited for something like the Pro line of MacBooks. But despite its ability to show off stunningly beautiful fingerprints, and to probably even a greater extent dust or pet hair, I've kind of just come to overlook it. It really does not bother me as it does for some other people. Now, one thing that is not lightly overlooked is the additional MagSafe charging port, which I am so glad Apple decided to bring back to its laptops and also continue to offer the ubiquity and versatility of USB-C charging. So yes, I like charging with MagSafe. I like knowing there's additional security in case I trip over the cable, so I'll usually use that when I'm charging at a heavily trafficked area. However, USB-C charging also works great, and if I'm connected to something like my external studio display, it means that the MacBook is charged and connected to the display with just a single cable connection, which thankfully you don't often need to do. Apple's battery life magic from the M1 chip continues on the M2 chip, and with an official battery rating of 18 hours of watching offline video, the M2 Air can last all day long, even with mixed usage. That covers things from basic tasks like browsing Safari with multiple tabs open, messaging your friends, watching plenty of YouTube videos like this one, give yourself a round of applause for watching this, and lots of writing, which feels great on the Magic Keyboard, especially with the bigger row of function keys, which ensures bigger space to more confidently tap these shortcut keys. This battery workflow even extends to some more intermediate tasks, like some light editing in Final Cut Pro, editing photos in Affinity Photo, and staring at my beautifully clean-shaven face in Apple's 1080p MacBook Air webcam for some FaceTime calls. Thank you again to our sponsors, Harry's. By the way, the camera is a nice improvement over last year's M1 Air, which only had 720p video quality, and I don't think most people will complain about your video calls with this 1080p camera. More importantly, the microphone sounds great and really picks up on isolating your voice, so you can even ditch getting a dedicated microphone. In fact, this microphone is so good that I often use it for recording additional segments in videos and for other recordings that I need to get out quickly, and in fact, this entire read was done using the M2 Air's built-in microphone. The slightly bigger 13.6-inch display is also nice, and it's a good size for the MacBook to have a couple different apps open at once, but don't be fooled, the display can still get cramped fairly quickly if you like having a lot of apps open at once. The 500 nits of display brightness is good for indoor use, especially if you're next to bright windows, and image quality is good for an LCD display. But that could also be said about the last few MacBook iterations. They all kind of had a pretty good LCD display. I'd say the biggest improvement over the M1 Air isn't exactly the display quality, it's just how it looks. The slimmed down bezels makes the M2 Air look much more premium and lets it take more advantage of the physical dimensions of the device. One area where I still walk away a little disappointed is with the speakers. They're good for laptop speakers in a product this thin, but I think they're just a little too quiet at max volume, probably because there's no speaker grills on the front of this MacBook Air, and the speakers are now kind of placed behind the hinge. That kind of extended workflow for basic and even intermediate tasks with this MacBook Air is part of the magic of this device. On a 100% charge, it can last me for a day of use and maybe some after that. The Air's battery is so reliable that it's reduced my battery anxiety when traveling with the MacBook, and while I used to do the usual shuffle of always making sure I packed a charging brick and the correct charging cable, and then search for a table at a coffee shop nearest to the closest outlet, those thoughts have rarely crossed my mind when using the M2 MacBook Air. The battery life, just fully 100% charge, is good enough. This is one of the features after being on Apple Silicon that I have sort of taken for granted. The MacBook Air, out of all my Apple devices, has the best battery life. It's better than my iPhone, and even better than what used to be the iPad's legendary battery life. And that just wasn't the case on Intel Macs, where I think I can confidently say for a time, those had the most unreliable battery life out of all my Apple devices. The Air is not without flaws though, and perhaps not without controversies. Lower storage speed on the base model and a bunch of extreme tests that could show thermal throttling issues depending on how you use this laptop. However, while I've certainly talked about that in the past videos and had similar experiences, I must say 1 month in, using both the 256GB and 512GB model in my daily use, I did not notice a difference in SSD speed, and at no point did one of these models feel faster or slower than the other in general use. That's not to say the 256GB drive is the same speed. It is slower in some tasks. Transferring files and measuring out the time shows a clear advantage for the faster 512GB drive. So I can get why people might want to avoid the base storage model. However, 1 month after the Air's release, We are already seeing some decent discounts, and as of the making of this video, Amazon has the M2 Air base model on sale for $1,099. That's $100 off the original price, and I don't hesitate on recommending the base model at that price point. I would say there's some unnecessary upgrades though, because the M2 chip is bigger and runs a little hotter during prolonged intensive tasks. I would say stay away from additional upgrades like the 10-core GPU model. Perhaps there are some users where this $100 upgrade would be more worth it, but in my testing, it hardly made a difference, and in some cases actually resulted in slightly lower performance, so I think it's fair to say most people can skip that upgrade. In general though, the M2 chip is faster than the M1, and in the fanless design of the Air, it's impressive how even with a bunch of Safari tabs open, watching YouTube videos, and literally while editing video in Final Cut Pro on my lap, the bottom of this laptop remains cool to the touch, something I could never say for any incarnation of an Intel MacBook. And that's kind of the point of this video. 1 month after using this MacBook Air, I understand more of who to recommend this laptop to. It's not for people on an M1 machine. The improvements aren't good enough to warrant you spending another $1,200 on a laptop replacement. But it is for anyone who is coming from a Windows laptop or an older Intel MacBook who wants to experience the same initial wow factor that I experienced with my first Apple Silicon Mac. What made those first M1 MacBooks great still applies to this M2 MacBook Air, but now with a more suitable design that has the potential to wow you as well. Before recording this video, I did a Google search for what is the best MacBook for, and it's kind of a loaded question for a lot of those answers, because the best MacBook is a $6,000 MacBook Pro. But I asked myself, would I recommend the M2 MacBook Air for most of these users if they only had around $1,200 to spend and wanted a MacBook? For most of the scenarios, the answer was a yes. Sorry gamers, you shouldn't buy the M2 MacBook Air. But for a lot of these common search questions, the M2 Air can to an extent handle most of these tasks. And you need to ask yourself, how much Mac do you really need? Oh, look at that. It's the Mac Studio. Oh yeah, that's a big Mac. No, not that kind of Mac. Okay, that's better. The M2 MacBook Air is great for anyone who wants a MacBook Air that will be reliable, fast, have great battery life, great build quality, and can not only handle your basic tasks, but can also power through some more intermediate workflows like editing 4K videos in Final Cut Pro, manipulating images in Affinity Photo or Photoshop, editing podcasts in Logic, or even makes a great starting laptop for coding or development. I think those are the same thing. Good doesn't mean best though, and of course spending more money will net you a MacBook that performs better. Listen, if you're already a pro and you make money from your craft and you need the fastest Mac possible, then perhaps this MacBook isn't the best choice for you. If you need the speed and you have a fatter wallet, the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pros are still excellent choices and perform even better than what the M2 Air offers, with more premium technology like a mini LED display and more ports that are better suited for pro workflows of connecting external devices. These upgrades don't come for free though, and the base model price difference between an Air and an M1 Pro MacBook Pro is quite frankly out of most people's budgets. That's what I've learned after 1 month of using the M2 MacBook Air. Don't be fooled. For most people, this laptop will deliver on what they want. A modern design with good performance, great battery life, that's thin and light enough for them to take on their morning commute or to the coffee shop. It's for people that would be fine with an M1 Air, but just want a few more bells and whistles, and let's be honest, a flashier design that will age really well, and I can't fault them for that. So don't listen to all these people telling you to buy a more premium MacBook. You probably don't need it. All right, that is my 1 month review of the M2 MacBook Air. But now it's your time to review the reviewer. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of the M2 MacBook Air? And I will catch you in the next video. Take care, everyone.